Welcome to the It's Attainable Real Estate Investing Show, where you will learn about investing, the power of real estate investing, and how to invest in it. Whether you have the time or even if you don't, you're going to see it's attainable either way. And now your host, who always wants to share knowledge with you, Christopher Balkin.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the It's Attainable Real Estate Investing Show, episode number 16. We've got a special guest today, Damion Lupo. Ripping conventional wisdom apart for the Main Street investor looking for truth about money and investing. Our guest today, Damion, has been an investor for over 20 years. When it comes to real estate, he purchased his first property with a Visa card. I'm looking forward to asking him about that. That move snowballed into 150 rental houses in less than 5 years. But in 2008, he lost his entire business. He lost it all, only to bounce back and recreate his wealth in less than 5 years. This best-selling author of a dozen books on personal finance, investment, and retirement strategies, which we're going to talk about today, Damion is on a mission to free 1 million people from financial bondage. I'm looking forward to helping him with that goal. He hosts the Financial Underdogs podcast and has developed the ultimate investment and retirement tool called the eQRP, which we're also going to talk about today. His strategy gives individuals total control of their retirement money to invest in real assets, not just paper ones such as the publicly traded stock market, but real assets like real estate, gold, cryptocurrency, or whatever you think meets your goals, which is most important of all. All right, let's welcome Damion Lupo to the show. You heard his profile, you heard his bio. One of the amazing things that caught my attention in that was how you started out purchasing that rental property on a Visa card. So you purchased your first property on a credit card. I can't believe that. We got a lot to get to, but first you got to tell me and the audience a little bit more about that.
It's funny. This is probably one of those things where it's more of a don't do this type of thing unless you're 20 years old and you're just crazy enough to charge a house, because that's basically what I did. I had a buddy of mine that showed up one day and he said, "Hey man, I want you to be the money for my deal." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, I found a house. Lady's willing to let us take over the mortgage and we need some cash." And I didn't have any cash, but what I had was my credit card. So I took a cash advance and started investing in the 90s. Just closed that sucker New Year's Eve 1999, and
Wow.
and that's kind of how it all started. But it was crazy because I really did use my credit card to buy a house, and I wouldn't condone that strategy. Yeah. It's not necessarily one that I recommend at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, you definitely had to be certain about what you were getting yourself into, because credit card interest rates, unless you got the no interest, but credit card interest rates are crazy, or can be.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because when you look at interest rates, what the ultimate thing, people tend to think of investing like they do shopping. They want to have the best interest rate, and sometimes the best interest rate the interest rate doesn't matter as much as the overall deal. And so maybe you take over a mortgage and it has a 6 or 7% interest rate. That seems crazy today when we're doing 2 and 3%. But if the actual numbers on the other side, if it only had a balance of, say, 20% debt on the value, maybe that it actually still works. So I think it's important to look at the whole deal if you're investing, and not just a little piece and get freaked out because the interest rate happens to be too much. And on the other side, when I first started, I remember buying houses where I'd basically buy a house for $100,000 that was worth $95,000 because I got to take over financing, and it was all a cash flow play. So I was paying. It didn't matter how much I was paying; it was eventually going to get paid off anyway. It was more just looking at the whole deal. So holistic investing is much more important than just narrow scope and finding little things that you don't like and then walking away because of the one thing.
I completely agree. As long as the numbers make sense, for sure. All right. Now that we got that out of the way, that caught my attention there with the Visa card, but certainly aggressive. And like you said, as long as the numbers make sense, it works out. So you bought that in 1999, the first one. I know you got into it much more heavier in 2008 from what I'm understanding. How did you scale? Tell me a little bit about your journey there from 1999. Go ahead.
Yeah, so here's one of the things that I learned, and I didn't know I was doing it, but when I got involved in my investing, I started investing in houses. I bought houses, and then I bought more, and then I ended up with 150 houses. And one of the values in that is I stayed focused. And what I see most people doing is they buy a house, they go, okay, that was cool. Maybe they buy a duplex or two or three, and then they say, I want to go buy apartments. Then they go after mini storage. Then they go after starting up a plumbing business or whatever. Like they're all over the place, and they're constantly getting at the end of the line. They're not actually making progress. They're not building momentum in anything. And the secret to my success was doing the same dang thing over and over. And it seems like obvious, but it's funny how uncommon it is. And really what happens is you have to shift into more of a farmer than a hunter, because it's really fun and exciting to go on the hunt. And when you're thinking about it, whether you're hunting animals or hunting houses or deals, I hear people all the time, I love the deal. I'm a deal junkie. I love analyzing. I love going after things, negotiating. And I'm like, okay. The problem is if you get your juice from the deals, you're doing the wrong thing. You should be looking at investing as kind of a boring thing. And if you need juice, go take up skydiving, because really investing should not be exciting. If it is, right, you're about to have an event called a seminar where you write a big check and you have a learning experience and your money's gone.
I'm with you there. So how did you scale? So you started with the single families, and you stuck with that for?
So I did that for a good 5-6 years, and I built up millions of dollars in net worth, lots of cash flow, and then once I had that, I thought, oh, okay, well, I sold off a bunch of those, had all this cash, and thought, I'm going to go into the multifamily space. So I went into not only the multifamily, I went into the development of multifamily. I was building multifamily, remodeling. I was building condo towers, and I was working in 7 different states, flipping $4 million houses. I was everywhere, all over the place, making no particular dent in anything except in my head, because it was a lot of brain damage. And because I didn't have any depth of understanding and I wasn't really focusing anywhere, I went from a $20 million net worth to a negative $5 million net worth in 12 months. And That was just because I got enough stuff wrong simultaneously, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's the biggest problem I see. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what to ask. And how do you fix that? You find people that are balder and greater than you, and you say, here, I would love for you I'd love to have you mentor me, and you offer to pay people a lot of money. And people go, well, I don't have any money. Well, if you're going to pay attention and somebody's going to pay attention to you, there's got to be an actual exchange. It's got to be something. You can't just go up to somebody and say, I need a mentor. Well, good for you. That's congratulations. But if you actually want to make progress and not spend 20 years and instead maybe spend 20 months, there's a hack, and it's called leveraging other people's experiences and their wisdom.
Yep. I'm with you there. So did you then pay for a mentor that you then, when you go into the multifamily, decide to go about and choosing a mentor?
So it's interesting, because in the beginning I had lots of mentors. I had masterminds. I had people. One mentor in particular, I wrote a check to him for $400,000 over 2 years. So unless you're hiring Tony Robbins, nobody pays that much money for mentors.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. But I wanted the best, and so I went out and I found a mercenary that had made hundreds of millions, and that's what he charged. It was like $10,000 for a half hour. And so we spent a couple of years working together, and I found out he was all about the money. And what was interesting is back then I was all about the money. So it was a perfect alignment. Now I couldn't stand to be anywhere near the guy, and he's fairly famous. And that's how I scaled, was having that mentality. The problem is, as soon as I thought I knew everything, I got rid of my mentors. And being the smartest one in the room when you really don't know anything, but you think you know everything, is a recipe for disaster and bankruptcy.
Right. I'm with you there. So I got a couple of things I want to mention on that. With the mentor, how do you go about finding your mentor? I see the topics come up a lot on the online forums and some of the conversations I'm a part of. And what do you do in terms of choosing yours?
The easiest way to go find a mentor is find somebody that's already gone down your path. There are plenty of people that are out there that are offering to mentor and coach and things. I'm more of a fan of mentors that have been through stuff. And the problem with coaching is that so many people are coaching that don't have any freaking experience. They've studied a course, or they're regurgitating something. And a lot of a coach / mentor's job is asking questions. So you can be a great question asker, but if, in my case, when I've gone through all these things, if somebody were to come to me and start telling me what's going on, their story, and have a question, instinctually I have answers. I don't just have a question, but sometimes I can see things that are creeping up, whereas a coach would never know that they're about to trip over a landmine and blow themselves apart. So how do you find that person? First off, you want to find somebody well beyond where you are. And if you're hiring somebody just to ask good questions and they happen to be a coach and they haven't had the experience, you're probably hiring the wrong person. You want to find somebody, and there's a lot of people that teach it. If it's in real estate, there's a lot of people that are out there that have mentoring and coaching programs. The problem is most people are cheap, and they say, well, I don't want to spend $10 or $20 or $30,000 for a coach. And I'm like, well, make one mistake in real estate, it's going to cost you $20, $30, $50,000, or it might sink you completely. So why are you whining and complaining about a $30,000 coach or mentor that's actually been there and done that? All they're going to do, you're leveraging off of their experience, you're leveraging off of their certainty and their confidence, which is worth way more than any check you're ever going to write. But I know it's hard. It was hard for me to write those checks. I still don't like writing those checks, except I love the results. So I fall in love with the check because I understand what's coming with the check.
Okay, no, totally understand that. So find someone who has the experience, and that's partly, at least one of the reasons among many that I invited you on the show. One of the prerequisites that kind of set for the show is that you have to have the experience. I want people on who can talk and relate to hands-on experience, not just read a book or attended a seminar or even been a mentee but never done the work. So certainly prerequisite for everyone out there listening. If you're looking for a mentor, make sure they have done the work. And secondly, I heard you say make sure they are ahead of where you want to get to.
You want people that are decades ahead, and generally that means they're decades older than you. There's value in having people that are not decades ahead, but they just had to have started earlier. Okay. Because if somebody's gone out there, I see people that are mentoring and coaching, and they're teaching people how to invest in an apartment. They've been doing it for 2 years, and I go, what could you possibly know? Yeah, well, I've done some stuff and I've never lost money. It's like, congratulations, you've never been through a cycle. You've never you never lost investor money. You've never gone through these things. You want people that are, and there's plenty of people. So let the people go get the experience and come back out there. But everybody, here's the deal. It's easier to coach and mentor and teach than it is to do the deal, because there's no downside. So the model is, I'm going to go do a deal and then I'm going to teach about the deal and charge a lot of money, and I have no way to lose because it's all income. And that's what most people end up doing, unfortunately, because it's just easier to teach than to do. So there's an old saying, those that can't teach. So basically, if you can't get it done, you just go teach it. And our academic system's full of that kind of nonsense.
Right. I've seen some of that around. I like that. If you can't do it, teach. All right. I like that. All right. So you started with single family homes. You went into multifamily. At one point, you picked up a mentor to assist with the multifamily development, or something else in multifamily.
That was actually the problem. I had the mentor when I was going through all the finale of the house, the last couple of years of the houses. And then when I moved into the other stuff, I got rid of the mentor and started doing things on my own. And that's where I got into a lot of trouble, because there were so many things I didn't know, and I didn't know what I didn't know. Okay. So it wasn't like I could say, okay, I need to ask somebody a question. I didn't even know what the questions were. And so that's the downside for going through anything. You don't know what you don't know. And it's really the things you can't see. So I have something in front of me that says, what don't I see? And it's just a question to me to constantly challenge me on what my assumptions are, because our assumptions kick our ass. They literally will blow us apart because we think things are true and they're not true. And we find out later, wow, I was very wrong, but I had no idea. And there was nobody around me to challenge it. So this is one of the reasons you pay mentors, and you pay them a lot, because if you pay somebody, you'll pay attention. If you're not paying somebody and somebody gives you advice, like I don't like spending a lot of time with people if they're not paying me. And it's not because I need the money. I got plenty of money. I don't like wasting my time when I give somebody some advice and then they don't do it. I'm like, why did you waste my time? I can't get that back. You stole that from me. Yeah. And it doesn't mean I'm always right. It just means that when people are paying, they tend to pay attention and actually do something with it, because they don't tend to hate their money. At least the ones I work with. If they do, I don't work with them very long.
I know what you're saying there. I'm going to make a note of that. What don't I see? A constant challenge of looking at opportunities and deals and such. What don't I see? What am I missing? I wrote that down here. Okay, so at some point you pivoted to, and I heard part of the story, but I want you to tell it. You pivoted to guiding others on retirement accounts. So tell us a little bit about that. But first, I guess let's talk about in general what retirement accounts are. So I'll listen to you.
So basically, when we're talking about retirement accounts, we're talking about tax advantaged accounts. So if you have a checking account and you go invest your money, there's no tax advantages. You're literally just going to get taxed every time you do something. And so with retirement accounts, these are accounts, typical 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, thrift savings plans, things where you put money in, and there are rules that keep it stuck-ish for a number of years until you're 60, more or less. And that's just because the government wants to incentivize us to not be broke so that it doesn't have to take care of us because, quite frankly, the government's broke. So basically, retirement accounts are it's a future pile, if you will. And there was a transition where I got interested in this many years ago when I watched both of my parents go broke. And I thought, okay, so they retired basically broke, played by the rules. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized that the Wall Street system is a scam, that the financial advisors out there are not advising, they're selling their stuff. How do they make money? Not when you make money. They make money because they sell you stuff. And if your stuff goes down or doesn't work, they're still getting their fees. So I just looked at the system, and the deeper I looked into it, the more I realized the system was set up to feed on people, not to feed them. It was to feed on them, not to feed them.
Okay, all right, I'm with you there. So retirement accounts, a deferment. I like how you said that the government kind of puts restrictions in place where you can't access that money because if you did, if they didn't, then people would use it and spend it and they wouldn't have anything left, and then they'd be homeless or not having enough means to make do. And Social Security and things, which, as you said, the government's broke, so we don't know how long some of those things will be around. So I like that. So in terms of some of the type of retirement accounts you talked about, 401ks, 403bs, some of the thrift savings plans, I've also heard about solo Ks and self-directed IRAs. Can you tell us more about those?
So there's a lot of different retirement accounts, and there's a lot of different funny names for the same thing. So basically, there's either IRAs, which are under Section 408, which is where all the IRAs live, and then everything else is under 401, pretty much. And 401 is where you have 401ks, you have the thrift savings plan, which is the government's version of a 401k, 403bs, things for firefighters, teachers, police officers. They're all basically qualified plans. And so really when we're talking about things like a solo 401k is for somebody that it used to be a really good plan. And now it's the rules changed, tax laws changed. So the solo 401k is kind of a ticking time bomb nowadays. And same with the self-directed IRA. And that's why the eQRP is so important for people to know about, because it's basically bulletproof and it has a lot of flexibility. So all these plans have certain limits. You can put a certain amount of money in. IRAs, it's like $6,000 a year. With solo Ks and eQRPs and 401ks, those are all 10 times more, $57,000. The big difference is that when you have a plan, when you have an eQRP, that is a plan that you control. And you get to control it whether you're by yourself, whether you have employees. It's really a dynamic plan for you to have investments grow tax deferred or even tax free forever. And you get to control it. You can do what you want with the money. With an IRA, there's always a custodian, and quite frankly, you don't have control. Yeah, I mean, if you're not writing the checks, you might have to wait weeks to do a deal. And then the biggest problem for people that are doing real estate alternative investments is that there's this tax inside of IRAs that most people don't know about, and custodians generally don't talk about because they're not in the accounting world. They're just in the IRA custodian world. So if you do real estate investments, there's a ticking time bomb called a UBIT tax. And if your IRA is invested, you're looking at potentially 37% taxes on your gains. Most people have no idea this is coming, and with an eQRP, you're exempt. So there's really big differences between these in what you can do, what you can't do. Ultimately, the eQRP is the Ferrari. It's what gives you all the choices, the total control. It gives you protection from getting sued, which is unfortunately a reality in America. People are suing their ways to wealth. Everybody's become a victim. And I say everybody because the masses are getting more and more entitled instead of going out there and saying, okay, it's my life, it's my responsibility, I'm going to create it, I'm going to design it. And that's an option. But we see more people saying, I'm going to just take from somebody. And I look at that and I go, it's unfortunate, it's not right, but it is reality.
Right. So you got into where I was going next with the eQRP. Now, one thing you talked about with the solo K, the self-directed IRAs, and even the other retirement accounts that are more common, you mentioned control. What do you mean when you say they don't have control?
So when I say control, when you have an eQRP, you have a checkbook. You have your money, you write a check. If you want to invest, you can invest in 5 minutes. You're ready to go. If you have an IRA, you're gonna have a custodian. You have a custodian that you have to get permission from. They're always going to be overseeing your money, no matter what kind of IRA it is. Even if it's like a checkbook LLC, there's still a custodian. So it's like having a babysitter. And so there's a big difference. Whether you have control or not really depends on who writes the checks. And so IRAs, you definitely do not have the same control. And ultimately, you're giving away up to a third of your money if you're doing anything other than stocks. So that's just a dumb move. It's for people that don't know any better, quite frankly.
And a third of your money is the fees you were talking about when it comes to real estate.
So there's the tax, the UBIT tax, and that's the other thing too. Typically, custodian's goal is about a $4,000 a year type of fee to babysit your money. And these things pop up because a typical custodian, if you look at any custodian in the country, they have a fee schedule. And of course, everybody's in business to make money and do good generally, but it's like ridiculous. And you can sit there, and I've seen a lot of people that have come and shown me their fee schedule, and whether it was 401ks or IRAs. And usually what we see is instead of people making 8 or 9% what they thought they were making, they have a compounded rate of return of maybe 2% because of all the fees. So this is brutal. You're not going to get rich. You're just going to get old if you have the wrong structure. And that's what most people have, unfortunately.
Yep, I'm with you there. I've looked at some of the fees in a 401k of mine in the past, and you do have to watch the fees. One thing I noticed with the 401k is I thought you were going to say control in terms of the limitations you have in terms of what you can invest in. When I looked at 401ks in the past of mine, it's like a list of 12 to 15 mutual funds, maybe stock type of investments, not quite publicly traded stocks, but a small selection. But I know the solo K, the self-directed IRA, and it sounds like the eQRP, can scale much beyond that.
Yeah, so the big difference with control on your choices is the IRS says here are the things you can't invest in for all retirement accounts. And then what happens beyond that is administrators and plan designers will further limit them. So typically when you have a retirement account at work, they give you 15 mutual funds or maybe 5, and that's it. And so you're kind of stuck. So you have one asset class, which is paper, stocks. And with IRAs, you have more flexibility, but then you have all sorts of other problems. So yeah, you're pretty limited. There are things that you can't do. You can't invest in a property that you're going to currently live in, for example. You can't invest in something where like a child or a parent is going to be a participant in that deal with your retirement money. So there are certain things that you can't do. One of the things that I love is the ability for an eQRP to buy physical gold and silver and take possession. IRA is not allowed to do that. But right now, gold and silver is a very important thing for people to have to protect against all the printing. And if you're not aware of this, better learn fast, because we are printing ourselves into bankruptcy. The dollar is getting destroyed. And unfortunately, it's just happening. And so how do you protect? Gold and silver is a great way to hedge. And so you can use your retirement account. Can't do that with an IRA. You're forced to have the metal stored somewhere. eQRP, you can take it and actually hold it yourself.
Yeah, I was mentioning that in the introduction, that you get the flexibility of the control of investing in something that's real, not necessarily real estate, doesn't have to be real estate, but real assets, which would include real estate because it's a structure, like you mentioned, gold and silver and other things. It's still tangible. It's something you can hold or something you can see or something that someone is holding somewhere, versus with those 15 or those 5 mutual funds, it's just paper. You're so far removed from what it is that's going on in those funds and in those investments. So with the eQRP, and so I saw on your business card, or I heard that on your business card, either now or at some point in the past, you had financial mentor on there. And that tells me you want to help people. And I'm already learning, and I'm hoping others are learning also. But tell me a little bit more about the eQRP. What makes it a bit more unique, or how is it high level? How is it structured?
Well, I mean, the thing that makes it unique is that not only do you have power and control, but it's dynamic. So it allows you to grow your business, whatever you're doing, unlike anything else. So the previous things that were a good idea years ago, like solo 401ks, you could never hire somebody. You couldn't have a part-time employee. So the rules changed. So now, if you have a part-time employee, you blow up your plan, you've got to convert it to an IRA or do a full-blown 401k, which most people don't do because they want to do things like real estate. So how is it different and how is it unique? It gives you power and control to be able to grow it, not only grow the size, but grow your business. And it's also protected. I mean, when I mentioned liability, the unfortunate reality is every state has different rules about how much they protect. And some states like California are horrible. I mean, you might have a few $100,000 in your retirement account and get sued and have a court say, you're rich. I mean, you can't even buy a parking space in California and yet you're rich. But that's because the politics, there's these progressive judges in a lot of places, and they think that the victims that are out there that you hurt their feelings, they're entitled to your wealth. When you have an eQRP, it becomes bulletproof and you don't have that concern because of the way it's built. And unfortunately, IRAs, individual 401ks, those type of things are the previous way of doing things. And we're seeing a lot of people getting hurt because they just haven't structured themselves right. So there's always choices. And one of the things I think is important is that in anything, this included, you get what you pay for. And a lot of people just want to try to find the cheapest thing out there. And there's a lot of bottom feeders. There's a lot of companies that will do things. As an example, you can get a free IRA, free solo 401k at Schwab. Does that mean you're getting the same thing? No, you're getting something that's very limited, and you're going to get what you pay for. You're not going to have a team. You're not going to have the options. So I think it's important when you think about what you're going to invest in, the tools, the team, the accountant, the attorney, are you going to go and say, okay, my accountant is going to be H&R Block? Well, you're going to get what you pay for. So it's always important to think about that. Professionals always have A-level people around them, and they have A teams. They have the best products and services. They don't go cheap. But unfortunately, we've been trained to go shop at Walmart and use that same mentality across the board, and it will never serve us because you'll always pay a price eventually.
That's right. Like you said at the top of the show, when you had your mentor and your interests were aligned, you were on the same page on what you were all about at that time. Like you said, he was all about the money. He or she was all about the money, and you were as well. Things were going fine, so you surrounded yourself with a professional, someone who was ahead of you and had experience, tangible experience in what they were doing, and that rewards for you. So this should be no different when people are investing either actively as you were or passively in whether it's stocks, mutual funds, real estate, precious metals, etc., oil, whatever it might be. You need to put that control, or maybe keep the control, but you need to get the financial guidance or the education from someone who is a professional, someone who has done that, does it every day, and it served you well before, and it'll serve our listeners and myself good in the future. I know you also said at the top of the show, when you parted ways with that mentor, that's when you got yourself into trouble. And going from when you pivoted to the multifamily, you left that mentor behind, and then you had a lot of trial and error, probably, it sounds like, with the multifamily, and even more complex multifamily development, not just multifamily, but multifamily development. So I took a note there. Always surround yourself with the appropriate professional. You don't think about it when it's just investing, but you're right. You can definitely get what you pay for.
And something that I think a lot of people miss, and unfortunately there are a number of attorneys out there. We run into them at different conventions, and they're out there, and they'll suggest that if you're not an attorney, then you're basically an idiot. And so, unfortunately, and I've had a lot of attorneys, and I love my attorneys, but I see some of them trying to present themselves as the best option simply because they have credentials, and unfortunately, they don't really have any clues about reality. And so I always like to look at people and say, okay, cool. So you're an attorney, you got a JD, that's great. Are you also a professional investor? And do you have that experience? Do you actually have a narrow focus, or are you just like Abe Lincoln and you study all the different parts of the law, which means you're probably kind of lukewarm good at all of them, and so that means you're not really great. And I like to find people that are great. Like, what are they great at? And then compile a team of great actors, meaning they have specific execution intelligence and they have unbelievable experience. And that's what matters. And unfortunately, a lot of people say, well, I've got my credentials. I have a JD here, and I clerked for this person. Then I go, yeah, but that doesn't tell me if you actually understand my world. All it tells me is that you can buy a nice fancy suit and smile on a picture. And I look at that kind of person. And so credentials and being an expert you have to really figure out who you're working with. There's nothing more important. It's like H. Jackson Brown said, the number one most important thing in life is to pick the right partner. If you don't get that right, everything else doesn't even matter. And it's the same thing with your team. You get the wrong team, And a lot of people have the wrong team and they started off with the right team, but they outgrew their team. And so you have to really think about that. Do you have the right team now? And sometimes you just have to say, thank you very much for the past, and my future is different. It's going to be with different people because y'all are not growing with me.
I like that. I like that. And I note the word team. So we're not talking about just a person. Like you said, an attorney, they do what they do in that lane. But you think about a multi-lane highway, I would kind of refer it to as you have the accountant or the bookkeeper, then you have your attorney, then you may need guidance on the investing side of it. Those things are three unique, different things. It's not often that you'll find one person that has great expertise in all those. They may dabble in a few things, but in terms of having great expertise in all three or all the different areas you need, it's highly unlikely. And there's no reason not to hire the best, not to find the best. What do you have to lose? I mean, it may cost you a little more, but your retirement or whatever you're investing long term will be much more.
Well, and it's a great point that you make, because you're going to pay a price. The question is, are you paying in the beginning or the end? In the end, it's 10 times more. So to give you an example, when we set up retirement accounts, we charge more than most of the market. There are people that charge obnoxious amounts for less service, which makes no sense to me. But the truth is, if you spend the right money and have the right team, you're going to end up with literally 10 to 100 times as much. I can show people how to stop paying taxes completely in their life by using these retirement accounts. And people go, how's that possible? I'm like, because you're dealing with professionals. You're dealing with people that actually do this. You're dealing with people that deal with the other people that have all these great ideas that do stuff. We're not just regurgitating H&R Block forms. And it's really an interesting thing when people try to save money. When somebody says, well, so-and-so is going to offer this discount. I'm like, good. You know what? That's congratulations. Go with the discount person. You will always get what you pay for. And I love that. And it actually weeds out people that are just price shoppers, because they tend to be a pain in the ass anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. And then not just saving the money, but then the time also. And that, there's an old saying that, time is money, and you only have so much time. You can't get more of that. And that's the case if you're investing a certain way, or you have things structured a certain way for 5 years, and you get to the end of the 5 years and, you pay all these taxes that you weren't expecting to pay. You can start over, but you can't repeat you can't get those 5 years back. So you're not just wasting money by choosing the wrong people. You're wasting time as well that you can't get back to recover from. I heard in another, I think it was a podcast I was listening to you on, and you mentioned some changes that were coming, or that have come now with the CARES Act. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on there? So many people. Go ahead. Yeah,
in March of 2020, during this whole coronavirus thing, the Congress said, we're going to spend a bunch of money. We're going to print money, and then we're going to spend it. And one of the things that they put in this act was a way for people to pull money out of their retirement accounts right now, up to $100,000 in 2020. And you have a couple choices. There's no penalty. That's one thing, which is great. No 10% penalty. And the other thing is, you can either take it and spend it and pay taxes over 3 years, not all this year, or you can take that money out and then put it back into an eQRP with no tax at all. So what happened is, like, people that work for the federal government generally don't have any options. They have like the G fund and the N fund and the R fund, and like basically a bunch of mutual funds. Now what they can do is they can take $100,000 out, and then they can actually put it into an eQRP and start investing that in things like real estate or gold or whatever. And it gives them choices while they're still working. And most people have nobody's ever had this option. And all of a sudden, it's an option where people can take up to $100,000 out and do self-directed investing, which is a huge deal to get some of that stuff out of the crosshairs of Wall Street and the whole casino of the mutual funds that are out there.
Yeah, I know you mentioned one thing that there's no fee to do it, and so typically, just for the listeners, your 401k or your different retirement plans you may have with different organizations, government or commercial, private. So typically, at least I'll speak for myself, typically there's a 10% just fee right from the beginning, or 10% taxes right from the beginning. So whatever you're pulling out, $100,000, that's 10% of that just gone, and that you just don't get back. It doesn't come back to you later. It doesn't come back when you turn 65 or 70. It's just 10% that disappears into thin air. And so what Damien's saying is that right now, as part of the CARES Act, they've lifted that restriction. So immediately that you could potentially save 10% there. And this gives you maybe a one-time opportunity to, if things align for you, it gives you a one-time opportunity to potentially roll this, the money that's tied to Wall Street, those 4, 5, 15 or so mutual funds you have, to get it out of Wall Street, get it out of things you can't control and into something that you can. I think I got that right?
That's exactly right.
Yep. So, and then you still have to pay taxes on it, but as you said, you may have 3 years to do that. But the importance or the significance of it is that you get the dollars out of something you can't control and into something that you can.
That's it. It's about control. I mean, when it comes down to it, you're never going to be able to go do a deal if you're stuck in Wall Street. Like when I did my deal with the house, that particular house in Scottsdale, Arizona, I bought that thing. I think it was $6,000 that I put down. And when I ended up selling that, when I eventually sold it a few years later, I sold it for $140,000. And what I owed was about 90. So that six turned into about $40,000 to $50,000 over a few years. There's no mutual fund. There's no financial advisor that can give you that kind of return. That only happens because you used your brain. It wasn't about the money. And sometimes people will ask the question, well, how much money do I need before an eQRP makes sense? And I said, my response is, it's not about the money. You could put $5,000 in there that you rolled over or that you contributed, and that 5,000 can turn into 5 million if you're willing to actually get educated. It's not the money. It's your brain. It's more powerful than money.
Yep. And I always say it's what, meets your goals too. If you have, the goals are number one. If you have, if you take 5,000 and it turns into 50,000 or 100,000, that meets your goals, then fine. Or if you have 100,000, you can turn that into $1 million, and that's fine. But it's all about what meets your goals. And a lot of times that, and I paused earlier because I was thinking through, and I said it depends on if things align, or I'm thinking if things align for your goals, because maybe leaving your dollars in your savings accounts or your dollars in your retirement accounts, maybe you're doing just fine. And if it's meeting your goals, and you can do a retirement analysis and see that when it's time for you to retire, you'll have enough money to do so comfortably, then fine, leave it there. But if you do that analysis and you find that you're going to be short, or you haven't done that analysis at all, you want to do something that you have more control of, then now might be an opportunity to do so.
Couldn't agree with you more.
All right. So in a time where people think that COVID-19 is certainly, I don't want to make any light of it, but certainly in business-wise and financial-wise, so many businesses have closed, and it's impacted so many families and businesses and companies, organizations financially. There's actually an opportunity here, but if you don't listen and look out and kind of educate yourself on it, you could miss an opportunity that's here in front of you.
I see, and we're all in different versions of bubbles, where it's like an echo chamber, and we're around people that are like us. It's kind of just normal. That's what people do. They find people that are like them. It's very tribal. And what I'm seeing is that there's unbelievable opportunity where I see tons of people doing really, really well, and I know a lot of people are not doing very well. The ones that aren't doing very well, a lot of those people, unfortunately, are not looking out to solve problems. They're becoming part of the problem because they're just complaining and they're being scared. Well, look, there's tons of problems out there. And how do you make money? How do you create wealth? How do you get free? You solve other people's problems. Yeah. And there's plenty of problems out there. Like the list is long, so it's not that hard. You throw a rock out your window and you're going to run into a problem. So I really would encourage people, especially now. I mean, this is in the Great Depression. That's where unbelievable amounts of wealth was created. More wealth was created there than in any decade before or after. It was just like, that's where it's really interesting. One of the things that people do is they cut back marketing budgets. Well, that's dumb. Like, that's your generator. That's one of the things that people do. They say, well, I'm going to save money here. And I go, that's the last place you should save money. Don't feed yourself, live off of ramen noodles or something, but keep feeding the marketing, and you'll end up on the other side of this being the stronger player in the market if you're actually going through. But a lot of people, they shrivel up and die, and it's because they're playing scared. It's like a team that says, we got to play defense. We got to really defend it. And they start playing not to lose, which is what they do. They lose. And that's what people are doing instead of going out there and playing to win and really And I think, Chris, the reason people don't play to win is because they're afraid of making a mistake. And I get it. We were trained as kids to not get anything wrong. And if you got something wrong, don't get very many wrong, because then you'll be a failure. If you get 50% wrong, you flunk out. In the real world, if you get 50% wrong, it means you got 50% right, which means you're a damn billionaire. So but the judgment and the way people look at us, and it's like, how are they doing us a favor by saying, oh, you messed up and that's bad? It's not bad. That's how you grow. That's how you get wealthy. That's how you make a difference. You think anybody that's making waves, whether it's Jeff Bezos or Oprah or Elon Musk, that they haven't tripped over everything and made every mistake? You're damn right they made all the mistakes. And they keep going. And yet the people that are saying, well, I need more money from the government, why are they doing that? Because they're not out there making mistakes. They're not out there hustling. There's plenty of opportunity. It's everywhere. And I have a hard time with people that say, I need something from somebody else. I need to take it, or I need the government to help me. Yeah. Most people don't need the government to help you. I get there are some, but most people that get help don't need it. They're sucking on what, and it's not very cool.
No, I'm with you there. And I don't like to reference a lot of cliches, but there's some old cliches in that. That scared money doesn't make money, and I think that's a case here. That you could. A conservative thing is to I would say conservative thing is to leave your dollars, your investments, or whatever money you have in a savings account. It's government backed, but it doesn't make any money. I recorded a show earlier, several shows ago, that a savings account by definition is, when you look it up, when you put something there and you come back, it's still going to be there. That's not really investing. That just means it's going to be the same way it was when you come back to it. And that's really what it is. But investing has a risk. But when you look at the definition of that, it's the intent to grow, that you're going to plant a seed and it's going to grow or flower and be much more potentially than what it was when you left it. So just by definition, just basic, no knowledge, just basic Webster's definition, the two are totally different. I guess scared money doesn't make money. I talk with some peers, and you see people that are, at least in the real estate industry, who are like, scared to invest. And it's like, well, we're kind of out looking for opportunities. We don't want to stop and shut down. We don't want to slow down marketing. In fact, a partner and I are talking about increasing marketing. So it's kind of like you said, you just got to keep going. Like it's this too shall pass, hopefully. But you just got to get out there and no excuses.
No excuses. Love it.
Yeah. So we learned a lot in this show, and I think it all relates, kind of back to the beginning, like what you just said, in that failure, you're taught that failure is not an option, but really, you learn. If you learn from it and you continue, like you said, maybe you failed, but if you got half of it right, then you've got more knowledge than you had to start with. So you started the business with real estate, and then you lost it all to the negative side, but then you recovered and went on to grow many more businesses, many more books. With this eQRP option, you filled a need. Like you said, there's a lot of problems out there, and you and your team have solved a problem for people. So you've come a long way. What's next for you?
It's interesting because before it was more money. So whenever I made money, it was always more, and I thought more was better. And now I know that more is better, but it's the question of what is more. And if it's about money, that's never going to be better because it's never enough. Right. What's better for me is more shackles that are broken, more financial freedom that happens because the bondage is broken. And I mean, we're living in a modern day. It's kind of serfdom. There's slavery across everybody. It's not just, like 100 years ago when we talk about slavery, we're talking about financial slavery. Our system is set up to keep people enslaved, where they're wondering why it's getting harder and harder. And so what's next for me? More people who have their shackles undone. Because I don't care if you live in America, if you're financially stuck, you're stressed and you're struggling and you're never able to make choices other than what the money will allow. Well, it's kind of like a master. I mean, that money is your master. Right. And so we have to break free of that. I mean, that's when my friend Robert Kiyosaki and his wife Kim started Rich Dad, their company there, and he wrote the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. Their mission was to elevate the financial well-being of humanity. And it's because nobody's doing it. And the school said, nope, can't talk about money here. Well, why not? Because there are a bunch of idiots teaching. They don't know anything about money. I mean, are teachers rich? No. They just pontificate and thump their chest. And the reality is they're part of the problem because they're not teaching people for a good reason. They don't know how to teach it. And I just think that my life mission is really easy. It's really clean. Maybe it's not easy. It's simple because there's a lot of resistance in the system. The system wants to keep feeding on people. Yeah. And so it's almost like a war. It's a war for people's freedom. And it's a war we're going to win.
Yeah, I like that. The name of this show is obviously the It's Attainable Real Estate Investing Show. And we want to show people that it is attainable. There's options out there. You have to try, but there's certainly options out there. I call it's attainable because there's opportunities that you may walk past each day and you just don't think that it's in your budget, that it's even possible that you could be a part of the skyscraper because I'm in real estate, but whatever it might be, in relating to real estate, the buildings you go to for employment, you don't think that you could own that building versus just being an employee there and using the space. But those things are attainable, but you do have to reach after it. But if you do reach after it, there's opportunities for you to, like you said, free yourself from the bondage and slavery of finances, because it certainly can get you down. So hopefully I can help you with that by sharing this knowledge with people. I think we got the same goal there, to allow people to free themselves, at least when it comes to finances, and that can open up so many things for others. So we talked about a lot here. One of the most important things I liked about what you said was you started, you went into real estate, you failed, you got back up, you built a whole lot more. We've taken everyone through what they should be doing when they stop the podcast here, is looking at moving from just their 401k funds and 403b funds and thrift savings plans into something more controllable beyond a solo K and a self-directed IRA, but more so into the eQRP. How can people get in contact with you to do that?
Best thing to do is to start the journey with some education. And the simplest thing, since you're probably either watching this or listening to this on your phone, just text the word eQRP to 72,000 and you'll get a copy of the consolidated version of the book. So okay. I wrote a book called the QRP book. This will give you a report, and it effectively sums up the stuff we've talked about and some of the details. And they'll give you enough to where you can say, this is for me, or this is not really for me. And it'll take you 5 minutes. So okay. I would recommend just text the word eQRP to 72,000 and start the journey there. And then if you have questions, we'll get on a phone call, and the team and I will be happy to help you, whether it's eQRP or anything else. We're here to break the shackles. eQRP is how we do it for a lot of people. And sometimes it's fire your accountant. Here's another one. And I mean, it's stuff like that. So it's custom tailored. It's not one size fit all. And yep. This isn't for everybody, but we do have something for everybody. And that's kind of the bottom line.
Yep. So matching their goals to finding a vehicle. The eQRP is one of many. Like you said, you've got something for everyone, but listen to the goals and then matching their goals to a vehicle that can get them there. So I'll put that into the show notes, how to get in contact with you, and I'll display it on the screen too, so everyone can see it if you're watching this, as you said, on either listening to it or watching it on your phone or PC. I got one more question for you. How would you encourage others to get going? We talked about how people you're in a bubble, you're in people that are doing similar, same thing as you, they got the same problems as you, they've got the same successes as you. How would you encourage others to get going? Because people make a lot of excuses, and we probably can't fix that, but how would you encourage others to get going who may be just scared or just uneducated? We find even here with COVID-19, in a time where it seems to be a financial burden, that there's possibly a financial sunlight in what the government has done. But like we talked about, if you don't get outside of that bubble to find and educate yourself or know about it, you just think that the world's crumbling around you. And in some ways, there are some things that are unfortunate, obviously, with COVID-19, but there is some sunlight when it comes to at least this financial opportunity that may be there. So again, how would you encourage others to get going?
I look at the formula being the formula for a peak life, and it's something that I coined about a year ago. And PEEC is PEEC. It's purging. It's the environment. It's It's your experiences and it's your contribution. So I think what we have to really do is we have to start with purging. You have to get rid of the things that aren't serving you, because what happens is we have legacy assets and we have legacy liabilities. We have legacy, meaning from the past, it's still with us. And some of that's like people. And people go, I can't get rid of my friends. I can't fire my mom. Well, okay. I mean, your future is going to look a lot like your past and basically the same thing if you're not willing to get rid of some of the things that are influencing you. So how do you get started? You open space. And sometimes that it's weird because we try to add things on, but our lives are typically very full. And it's the same thing like when you have a house. If you have a bunch of clutter, clear everything out and then ask yourself from a blank room. I call this the blank slate principle. What would I really like to have in this environment, this space that would serve me well? And you bring those things in, and then you realize you have a bunch of junk that should never have been in there, or maybe not anymore, and you just get rid of it. And it has to do with people, it has to do with stuff, and ultimately, once you open space, then you can do something. The simplest thing I like people to do, because it's easy and simple, and it gets the ball going in a different direction than most people have done before, is buying an ounce of silver. And I say that because an ounce of silver is going to be like 30, 35 bucks. And it's something that most people have never done before. It's real money. It's God's money. It's stuff that was it's been here for 5,000 years in terms of being money. And it helps you rethink and reimagine doing things differently. And it starts the momentum train. And that's what people get stuck with, not making any activity or not making any progress because they don't know what to start with. You asked how do they get started? What do they start with? I like that one. If you're not going to purge, because it sounds terrifying to like fire your mom. I'm not saying go get rid of your mom. I'm saying it's people take it like that. But really something simple that you can do. Like if you can't figure it out, go to eBay, type in Silver Eagle, go buy one, have it shipped to you, and then hold it. Start with that. See what happens. You might just recognize there's a little magic in that.
Okay, I like that. Space, PEEC for peace. And yeah, I like that. Starting with maybe an ounce of silver. I like that. All right, Damion, it's been awesome having you in the show. I know that I enjoyed that being that financial mentor. You definitely showed that here today. Again, that was another reason why you're here. Hearing that a mentor helps people or helps someone, and knowing that that's one of your chief goals at this point in your life. We're happy to have you on. I know you helped me, and I know you helped everyone who is listening as well.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks for everybody for listening, and I look forward to meeting you guys.
All right, so we learned a lot. Let's recap a bit here. I've got a few points among many that I took out of this. So Damion started his investing journey long ago, and when he was into real estate investing, he had great success. He grew his business into a multi-million-dollar business, but in 2008, 2009, he lost it all. And it wasn't just based on the economy downturn that occurred and impacted many people around the world in 2008, 2009 or so. It was because he, as he described, he left behind a mentor. He transitioned from one part of real estate into another part of real estate, multifamily development, and he left behind his mentor without replacing that mentor with someone else. So when challenges arose, he didn't have a professional. He didn't have a mentor. He didn't have someone to advise him on navigating around those challenges that were arising. So he lost it all. Thankfully, he did rebuild his wealth, and now he wants to help others. So he's in a much better situation now. But the message that I took from that, and hopefully this will help you too, is you need the right professional in your corner. Whether that's the right attorney for the type of business that you need them to support you with, or the right tax professional or accountant or bookkeeper. When it comes to investing, you want the right advisor there too. When it comes to real estate investing, that's my specialty, so I can assist with that, but I'm not an attorney, I'm not a tax professional, I'm not a bookkeeper, I'm not an accountant. So I have to surround myself with peers and partners who focus on that part of the business. That's their profession. So I'm no different. I have to surround myself with the right professional to support that part of the business that I need them for. In talking about getting the most out of your retirement funds, I want to spend just 1 or 2 more minutes on that topic. So typically you're given a 401k or a 403b or a thrift savings plan provided to you from your employer, some type of retirement plan that you and or the employer can contribute to. And ideally that would grow based on the investments that retirement plan can invest in. So typically, like we talked about today, maybe 5 to 15 mutual funds or stock-ish type of investments that you can have that are available to you to invest in with that retirement fund or with that retirement account. So you don't have much control over those funds. That's what's available to you. And it's stock-ish, as I call it, mutual funds or stock-ish type of investments that are out of your control, but that's what's there for you to trust your retirement funds into. So there's other options. There's the solo K, there's the self-directed IRA, and as Damion talked about today, the eQRP, which can provide additional benefits and additional gains and grow that wealth and keep more of that wealth versus paying it in fees and taxes. But there's additional options available to you that give you the ability to invest in things that you want to invest in, things that might meet your goals more so than a mutual fund or something that's publicly traded on the stock market, the equities market as it's called. So things that are real, such as real estate, such as gold or silver or cryptocurrency or whatever it is, again, that meets your goals. So why would you want to do this? Why would you be interested in potentially investing your retirement funds in something outside of what your employer or what your employer's retirement plan offers? Well, it's going to depend on you. It may be that the return or the rate of return or the rate in which your retirement funds are growing are not satisfactory to you, or they won't meet the goals for you when it comes to retirement. So maybe you're getting 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7% consistently on your retirement fund or your retirement account, but you want 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12% potentially on the return or the rate in which your retirement funds are growing. Or maybe you're comfortable with the rate or the return on your retirement fund or your retirement account, but you're uncomfortable with the volatility of it all, the ups and downs of the stock market being tightly tied to the ups and downs of your retirement fund or your retirement account. So maybe you're uncomfortable with the ups and downs and how when the stock market goes up and down for whatever the reason might be, whether it's COVID-19 or this or that, and your retirement fund or your retirement plan, the value of it going up and down in equivalency. So maybe you want to invest in something that is not as tightly integrated with the stock market or doesn't follow the ups and downs or volatility of the stock market. Perhaps real assets such as real estate or silver or gold or oil. Those things may not follow the ups and downs and peaks and valleys of what you find today on the publicly traded stock market. So if you have questions about that, reach out to Damion, reach out to myself. Happy to help. Speaking of help, was this show helpful to you? If it was, I ask that you share the show with someone else. And when you do, I'll see them and I'll see you back here next time to find out just how attainable real estate investing is to you.
You have been listening to the It's Attainable Real Estate Investing Show, sharing transparent knowledge on investing and the powerful impact real estate investing can have on your wealth and lifestyle. Follow or subscribe to the show using your favorite podcast app so you'll know firsthand when a new show is released, or visit neelyrealty.com/podcast and see the show there. That's NILEE realty.com/podcast.